It began with a knock at the door that hit me like a tax bill stuffed in an envelope. A guy in a bright orange vest, perched on an electric scooter with a smirk plastered across his face, handed me a certified letter as if it were a live grenade he couldn't wait to see detonate. "You've been served by Pinecrest Homeowners Association," he announced, like he was delivering a proclamation from the king himself. "I live on Carter's Hollow, a chunk of dirt my grandfather hacked out of the wilderness in 1952 with nothing but a shovel, a hammer, and sheer determination. Pinecrest HOA? They didn't even exist until 1991. Yet here was this letter claiming I owed them 30 years of back dues due law 78,453.36 to be exact. I had to read that number 3 times to make sure my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. My coffee went cold as I laughed, then teared up, then laughed again. That's when I realized this was war. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the itemized bill like it was some cryptic riddle from a bygone era. They'd charged me annual dues back to 1993, tacking on late fees, interest, and something called a neighborhood legacy enhancement fee, which I'm pretty sure was just HA speak for "we want a fancier sign out front." They even threw in fines for violations I'd never heard of: non-standard fencing, unapproved tomato plants, and my favorite, excessive self-reliance. What's they to fee for having a backbone? I pulled on my boots, still caked with mud from fixing the barn earlier, and stormed down to the HOA office that afternoon. The place was a bland box of a building, the kind that screams cheap rentals and cheaper life insurance. Inside, the walls were covered with cheesy signs like "Unity begins with rules" and "Order breeds peace." There was even a mural of a smiling family strolling past a perfectly trimmed bush with a leash-trained dog. Behind the desk sat Claudia, the HOA president. If you've ever met someone who thought they were the town judge, cop, and governor all at once, you've met Claudia. She had a peroxide blonde bob, a string of pearls choking her neck, and a face that looked like she just smelled a dumpster fire. She sized me up as I walked in like I'd dragged half the farm through her pristine lobby. "Can I assist you?" she asked, her tone dripping with "Why are you even here?" I slapped the letter on the counter. "You sure can. This says I owe you 78 grand for fees going back 30 years. She tapped her manicured nails on her keyboard. "That's correct. Our records show your property is under Pinecrest jurisdiction." I leaned in. "Pinecrest didn't exist when my place was built. You didn't pave your first street until 94. She flashed a smile that could sour cream. "Boundaries evolve, sir. The community grew, and your land is now part of our district. So let me get this straight," I said, crossing my arms. "You redrew your lines, decided my land was yours, and now you're billing me like it's a board game?" She stood up, all 5'4" of her radiating authority. Refusal to pay could lead to legal action, including liens. I laughed so hard the 2 other people in the lobby turned to stare. "Lady, my deed's older than your whole subdivision." She didn't flinch. "Take it up with the board, but they've never reversed a fee dispute." As I left, I spotted a giant map on the wall, Pinecrest's territory outlined in bold red marker, swallowing up nearby properties like a greedy kid grabbing toys. I snapped a photo with my phone, already sensing it'd come in handy. Back home, I dug into my rusty filing cabinet, the one that smells like motor oil and old paper, and pulled out the original 1952 deed to Carter's Hollow, complete with a state surveyor's signature. It pinned down my land to the inch, and better yet, it sat outside any annexation zone. Then I found a gem. A faded photo of my grandfather standing proud in front of the half-built house, his name carved into the porch step. That wasn't just a memory, it was proof. The next day, I took it all to my niece Emily, a hotshot lawyer who once took down a developer for bulldozing ancient oaks and won. She scanned the invoice, the deed, the map, and grinned. "Oh, they're toast." Emily dove in like a hawk on caffeine. Within days, she'd unearthed Pinecrest's original incorporation papers, and their first map-me land wasn't on it. She also found a later boundary expansion amendment, but they'd never notified me or a dozen other landowners. That wasn't just sloppy, it was borderline fraud. Meanwhile, the HOA upped the ante, sending another letter threatening community exclusion if I didn't comply, whatever that meant. Then one of their inspectors showed up, clipboard in hand, trying to find me for a mailbox that didn't match their standards. I told him it was a World War II surplus find with more grit than their whole board. He didn't crack a smile, I did. By week's end, Claudia filed a preliminary lien with the county. That's when I knew they weren't messing around, they were going nuclear. But they'd misjudged me, thinking I was just some grizzled guy with no fight left. They didn't know I had the original docs, a family legacy, a lawyer niece, and a fire in my gut every time I saw that absurd bill. Most of all, they didn't know I don't lose fights on land my grandfather built from scratch. The lien notice hit my mailbox like a legal Brickbat County stamp, official letterhead, and a smug note from Pinecrest's legal team, which turned out to be some guy named Greg who wore plaid bow ties and once fined a neighbor for wind chimes that played unapproved tunes. It said I couldn't sell, refinance, or fix up my place until I paid up. It was like they parked a junk heap on my lawn and called it justice. Emily laughed when she read it. This isn't just weak, it's a legal disaster. They're trying to enforce rules retroactively on land they never owned. They might as well bill you and play money. But Pinecrest wasn't done. The next day, 2 guys in vests showed up with the tape measure, claiming they were doing a Tier 2 property review (EW) to check my fence against current codes. I told them it was timber my grandfather cut himself, tougher than their subdivision's foundation. Non-compliant materials can be replaced at your expense, one said, snapping photos of my house, mailbox, even my mutt Rusty, who I'm now sure is on their watch list. That night, I rigged a motion sensor speaker by the fence to blare Sweet Caroline at trespassers. Small wins. By Friday, I got fined again for mailbox nonconformity, unregistered plants, and, hilariously, suspected foul activity. I put up a fake chicken coop as a gag, spray-painted "Property of Claudia" on it. She must have seen it on one of her drive-bys, started cruising the neighborhood in her silver SUV, glaring like a hawk. I waved once, she didn't. Emily said we needed a full counterattack. She dug into Pinecrest's meeting notes and hit gold. In 2003, they tried to expand their turf and filed a boundary amendment with the county, but they never finished the process. No notices, no surveys, no approval. They just acted like it was legit. They faked it, Emily said, showing me the unapproved map. Everything they've done to you is unlawful. Claudia went harder, sending a neighborhood email calling me a menace to our values and claiming I was dodging my duty to our shared dream. It leaked to the local Facebook group of Fatal Move. People erupted, posting their own horror stories. Fines for daisies, kiddie pools too near the curb, a mailbox too quirky. One guy shared a photo of a citation for a barbecue that ran past 8:01 p.m. Someone dubbed Claudia dictator in a blazer, and it stuck. She tried to rally support with a standards awareness meeting at the clubhouse. I showed up, front row, with Emily and the 1952 deed. As Claudia preached about uniform curb appeal, Emily asked, "Can you explain how you enforce rules on land outside your legal reach?" The room hushed. Claudia fumbled, mumbling about inclusive traditions. I held up the deed and said, "This house stood when your streets were mule paths. No red marker changes that." I flashed their doctored map next to the county's official Wanami land wasn't even in their zone. The crowd buzzed. An older lady asked, "So my fence fines were bogus?" A guy chimed in, "They fined me for a tree that's not even theirs." Claudia's face went crimson. "Meeting adjourned," she barked, slamming a gavel she brought herself. Someone yelled, "You forgot your dictator stick," as she stormed out. Back home, I cracked a beer on the porch, staring at the land my family forged. This wasn't just my fight, Anna Maria, it was about halting a power-hungry HOA from gobbling up what wasn't theirs. And from the neighborhood's reaction, I wasn't alone. When the Heritage Registry letter arrived, the game flipped. Carter's Hollow was now a protected historic site, thanks to old land grants, my grandfather's build logs, and a wild card. In the 60s, a film crew shot a Cold War flick here. One scene had the star leaning on my fence, brooding over the plains. It was no Oscar winner, but it had a cult following, and Emily used it to seal the deal. With that status, Pinecrest couldn't touch my fence, mailbox, or even the old tire I turned into a planter. Claudia showed up at my gate, fuming behind oversized shades. "This heritage thing is a cheap trick," she snapped. I shrugged. I just told the truth. History picked my side. She jabbed a finger. "You'll pay for this." Then she tripped over my hose reel, stomping off. I didn't hide my grin. But Claudia wasn't done. A week later, a legal packet arrived from Pinecrest's new lawyer, claiming eminent domain for a community project, a splash pad, playground, and laughably, a coffee stand on my land's edge. Emily nearly spit out her coffee. "They're faking a public need to grab your property. Your heritage status kills this." I nodded. "They think I'll fold because it's on fancy letterhead." She smirked. If they forged boundaries, what else did they fake? We dug deeper and struck oil. Their annexation docs had 3 county signatures, all dated on a Saturday, all in the same handwriting. The county had no record of approval, pure forgery. Claudia called an emergency HOA meeting to defend our honor, but it backfired. Emily dropped the bomb. Show us the real annexation papers. Claudia dodged. I laid out the fakes. The room exploded, laughter, booze, a kid yelling, coffee coup. Claudia bolted, Leah vying her gavel behind. In court, it was a slaughter. Emily laid out the deed, the unapproved maps, and an HOA email where Claudia admitted to bluffing the expansion. The judge voided the lien, tossed the fines, and ordered Pinecrest to cover my fees, plus a fraud probe. Outside, I told a reporter, feels like I torched a weed patch of arrogance. Claudia resigned, the board crumbled, and the neighborhood woke up. At Lux replaced petty fines. We passed a law requiring full landowner votes for future expansions. Carter's Hollow stood free, a testament to fighting for what's yours. At a 6-month VY Tory cookout, I toasted to the land, the law, and learning not to let petty tyrants run your life. The stars shone over my grandfather's field, and I knew, ink fades, but roots don't.